We also have Dr. Ashutosh Raghuvanshi, MD and CEO of Fortis Healthcare, now joining in. Dr. Raghuvanshi, thank you very much for joining us today. Dr. Raghuvanshi, key takeaways from this budget, what stood out for you and what disappointed you?
For the healthcare sector, I think it was very disappointing. The fact that this budget did not include healthcare as a priority itself is something very disappointing. None of the long-standing demands have been addressed. The overall allocation, though, has been increased by about 12.5%. But that was on a low base. I think what is required is much higher. So those were the sort of negatives. I mean, there are few positives as well, and some of the custom duties on import of X-ray tubes, for example, will also help the local manufacturers to increase their production. Cancer drugs, there are only 3 cancer drugs, though, which have been included, but nevertheless, that is going to have an impact. Some of the other schemes which have been announced for the employment side on the internship and on the women's development, I think those would have indirect effect on the entire industry, and healthcare would also be included in that.
Raghuvanshi, I guess this is more of a long-term plan, right? If you create employment, you improve earning capacity for a large part of this country, which then, of course, enables them to go on and spend on healthcare if and when there is a need. But we'll talk about that in a minute. These 3 cancer drugs, which have got a little bit of a waiver on custom duty, how does it impact a company like yourself? And we don't know much about these cancer drugs, but if you can walk us through it, it'll be interesting to understand what it means for the healthcare sector, if it does at all.
Yeah, no, it definitely means a lot for the patients. And as you know, the cancer therapies are generally expensive. These 3 drugs are essentially imported, and hence they are even more expensive. There are no equivalents available in the country. It would benefit the patients directly. But as far as the industry is concerned, it will not have an impact because these are mainly pass-through costs.
Right. Thank you, sir. Stay tuned. Of course, with us, we also have Mr. Rajan Bharti Mittal, past President FICCI and Vice Chairman at Bharti. Sir, let me first come to you with regard to your 3 key takeaways, 3 key positives and 3 key negatives from the budget, which you found for this particular budget, 2024.
You know, I think the 3 top things, if I were to say, manufacturing, especially the SMS and MSMEs have been taken care of, job employment and agriculture. I think any growth path that this country has to move towards Viksit Bharat, manufacturing and agriculture have to play a very, very key role. So I think that, I would say, is probably the top tier for us to say how this budget has been panned out. Of course, the Mudra scheme, the women empowerment, that also has been kept in mind. Especially manufacturing on the electronic side, that's heartwarming because I think India can become a manufacturing base more and more for the electrical electronics, which should happen now. All the PLI schemes have shown that the growth can happen in this country. So I think these are the good areas, of course, keeping in mind that fiscal prudence still be kept in mind. If I have to say that there is something which the industry, especially telecom industry, wanted, which has not been met this budget, and we hope that in future some course correction should happen, is on the telecom levies. We believe that telecom levies are far too outstretched. They need some rationalization over a period of time. Of course, the space industry has been spoken about, the small nuclear industry has been spoken about. We will have to see the fine print on that. Lastly, the finance minister spoke about the less of litigation and ease of doing business and taxation being part of that. That's I would say, a good note, and I hope that when we see the fine print, it starts working towards lesser and lesser litigation.
Mr. Mittal, I'm just going to ask you to step out of the telecom space and talk to me as an industry representative. There were lots of corridors in the industry that were expecting PLI schemes to be either extended or more sectors to be added, because this is one scheme that's actually worked really well in our country. And of course, there's also expectation that, that sunset clause for new manufacturing facilities would be extended. There has been nothing said on both those fronts. Is there a disappointment from the industry that none of these two clauses have been fulfilled? Because this is what you need to do to encourage private capex, right?
No, I fully agree. As I said, two sectors which have to add to the growth, agriculture and manufacturing. There is no doubt in my mind, if GDP has to grow, India has already stretched on the services side. So these two pillars have to contribute. And my belief is, as we're going to see budget, 6-7 months down the road, the course correction will happen. Maybe more PLIs are added. But I think the government also wants to make sure that the PLIs which have been given to the manufacturing sectors are fully utilized. They are probably also going to be watching which all industries who have utilized the PLIs have functioned well, what course correction needs to be done. So I would say this would be a work in progress rather than saying that is come to its fruition either way. So we'll have to watch this space.
Good. Mr. Ashutosh, if I can come back to you, just with regard to healthcare, as well as expanding healthcare for all, what more needs to be done in coming budgets, maybe over the next 2 to 3 years? We've of course built a good base, but from here, where can we go?
Of healthcare in this country, which needs to be addressed parallelly, the public healthcare system and the private healthcare system. The private healthcare can never become a substitute for public health in the larger context of the nation. And there we would have expected that there were significantly more allocations made for the purpose of the Ayushman Bharat scheme and the digital health mission. There was no specific mention to those. On the other hand, as far as private healthcare industry is concerned, there are several aspects which need to be addressed, which have been long-standing demands of the healthcare sector. One of them is the rationalization of the GST structure, because it being exempt, we do not get any input credit. And that actually results in a higher costs for the patient. So that is very important factor which needs to be addressed. And there are also several other measures which the government can take to promote the infrastructure being created in tier 2 and tier 3 cities where the availability of adequate infrastructure is not there. And for that, certain schemes of PLI, etc., could be tailored, which the private sector can sort of catalyze and use them as basis to create further infrastructure in those areas.
Mr. Jayakumar, talk to us. You were constructive on pharma. And just first give us your views with regard to the budget itself.
Any kind of disappointment about taxes, etc., is, I think, frankly, too small to even mention. The fact is, taxes have gone up a little bit, but those who are making the kind of money that they are making in the markets, if there is in some sense a redistribution of that wealth through the government, which means you pay higher taxes and the government then channelizes to a whole bunch of, whether it's social security, first-time employment program to generate employment in the country, addressing youths, I think it's an extremely noble way to do it. And I think the fact that it is finally tax on gains, let's not forget that it's on higher income or on income that you generate that you're paying this tax. So I personally have absolutely no bones to pick on this. We can go down to the fine print and to say that, whether, for instance, buyback is the same as dividends, etc. Those may be fine prints that we need to wait for before the end of the day to get clarity on. But the fact that tax rates have been moved up slightly, I absolutely have no issues on this. It's a different matter that nobody expected it. But it doesn't mean that everything that you expect must come through. And let's be very clear, the markets have been very kind to a lot of people and to all the people who've done their SIPs, etc. So they have to pay 2.5%, which is a 25% higher taxation on long term and 15 going to 20 in the short run. I do not believe, I repeat, I do not believe it's a problem. I think the distribution of that in the hands from the government to the hands of the necessary and the needy, to the needy is absolutely necessary, because really what we must see is a far more inclusive growth than just South Bombay, South Delhi, and a few pockets making money as a result of market movement. I think this has to be more inclusive growth, and I think the foundation stones have been laid for it, whether in terms of a slew of these programs for first-time employers, for promoting employment amongst youths. Ultimately, you don't want the demographic dividend or the demographic boon to become a demographic bane if you can't give employment where it is needed. And to generate employment and to foster that, if any schemes have come through and it means that certain rungs of the population have to pay, I am absolutely okay with it. Number one. Number two, excuse me, I think there's substantial emphasis on infrastructure. There's substantial emphasis on public investments, and they're hoping that the public sector investments, they're hoping the private sector also, keeps pace. I, for one, believe that the collections through taxation would be far higher than what have been the estimates in the budget. So overall, I'm very happy with the budget, largely because nothing much has been tinkered. And you could argue that the taxation increase could have been avoided, but I think a signaling had to be given that for more inclusive growth, different sections of the society need to contribute. And from that signaling perspective, I believe there's nothing wrong with this, and too much airtime and PRP has been spent by channels on the fine tune, on the fine print about taxation aspects and what the base, etc. is. That's something that we can always figure out later. But the broad direction about what this government wants to do in the next 5 years has been well laid out, and I'm delighted for it.
Right. We also have with us Motilal Oswal, MD and CEO Motilal Oswal Group, joining in. Hi, Mr. Oswal. This is Samina. Sorry to have kept you waiting, but it's just turning out to be a very busy afternoon. What have you made of the budget? Capital gains has been increased, but that translates into 35 basis points of gains, additional gains or earnings that an individual now needs to make to accommodate for that increase in capital gains. Are you impressed with the budget? The fiscal consolidation was better than expected. The budget did not tilt too much towards populism. And of course, it fixed the capital gains situation at a time when we're pretty much in a Goldilocks scenario.
Yeah, so if I have to really, I think, summarize about the overall budget, I would say that there are very minimum changes overall. And of course, I think there's a fiscal discipline. Absolutely, numbers are far better budgeted, which is good for the country. And overall, I don't see really, I think, many changes really, except few changes on the capital market side. So capital market gains, short term, long term, and STT. Of course, I would call it absolutely that there can't be any gains without any pains. So it's a capital pain budget in that sense from long term, short term, and STT perspective. But I think it was more on the expected line. But I think more important will be that how the whole regulatory changes comes in next few weeks about the overall any new restrictions or any kind of new changes happens, the way the future and options, especially the volumes are happening. So market definitely would look forward to those changes, and these in any case more or less I think not big change, but to the extent really I think it is a change, and global investors, domestic investors would like to see the continuity of policy on this side. Because if you have to look at the overall, just the huge number of people are coming in, but still if you look at the percentage of household savings coming to the market is less than 5%. So if we want to encourage more and more people to come here and invest for long term, especially their savings, then definitely there should be stable policies, and there should be some kind of encouragements for the investors who actually invest for long term. I have nothing really to say about the STT on the future option. That's okay, but I think for long term investors, especially capital gains tax, I wish they should not have any changes.
So, Mr. Oswal, just with regard to STT, I want to try and cap this tax angle off. Do you believe that this will dissuade investors from engaging in F&O? Do you, of course, you head and lead Motilal Oswal Group, and therefore maybe in the most relevant position to answer this.
Yeah.
It will, okay.
Yeah, it would, because the cost of transaction will definitely go up.
Right.
So in that sense, definitely it will make an impact, because people trade for very small gains or small amount of gains, and that's where it is going to impact them.
Right. And sir, do you believe on the policy side of things, enough has been done in this budget to push consumption?
No, I think the way things are happening, if I have to look at medium to long term, budget actually is becoming more a non-event, except few cosmetics, which is the right thing to do, because it brings predictability to the whole kind of, I think, policy environment. So I think really we are on the right track.
Mr. Jaikumar, I'll come to you now on what you made of the budget as a whole. While you did say that it's pretty much ticked all the boxes, from a portfolio standpoint, do you feel like it's back to business pretty much now, and the markets will have digested the change in capital gains, and of course the focus will be once again on earnings and fundamentals, and most importantly valuations, given how stretched we are right now?
You know, my budget take usually is budgets are nothing but a speed breaker on a highway. On a highway, you don't expect speed breakers, but if you do get it, you need to take the bump and move forward. I think in every which way the direction is clear, direction has already been laid out. I don't believe the budget has to that extent delivered anything dramatically different. Tinkering around here or there, you know, making changes in customs duties, etc. That's something that they do every year, which is digested well before even the markets shut. Sometimes you wait till the end of the day to read the fine print. So from my perspective, nothing much has changed. If it's business, it's back to business as usual. We go back to trying to make investments, you know, by reading balance sheets or understanding businesses. So the entire thing about, you know, whether, for instance, the F&O trading will get impacted as a result of retail not participating, I certainly hope that that's what happens. People don't understand the risks associated with F&O, and to the extent they don't and they continue to participate, they've been losing money.
Right.
My own assessment is that anything that deters this, in fact, greater deterrence should have been put in place, and any F&O trading that needs to be done either needs to be done through professionally or through mutual funds who should be offering these schemes. So I don't, for one, have, you know, will lose my night's sleep on any of these. I think the right deterrents are in place, and more importantly, the direction that the government has laid out has not changed over the years and continues to be as robust, but it's far, far more inclusive than it's ever been, or at least the pronouncements are making it far more inclusive. We expressed similar sentiments when DBT, etc. came in, but the fact that direct benefit transfers have made the kind of difference through the JM, Trinity, etc., indicates clearly that this path with the government, you know, giving to of going down the path of, you know, inclusivity, I think is a great step forward. And I, for one, welcome it. I mean, just look at the kind of social unrest in different parts of the world. I mean, clearly you don't want disparity to widen to such extents that this becomes something that the Indian, you know, Indian folks also get to see. So given all that, I'm very happy with the budget, and I have, you know, and I think we'll move on to business as usual and speak less about the budget starting tomorrow.
Right. Jay, on that note, from the start of this year, it was all about Modi stocks, PSB. So railway, fertilizer, defense, expectations of big bang announcements coming in the budget once again for them. And those stocks have ran up. They've doubled down. in the last 6 to 8 months. From where we stand today, and because it's back to business, would you still, were you ever overweight on these sectors? And if you were, would you remain overweight? Could PSBs continue to gain only on back of fundamentals from here on?
So I think the easy phase of the bull market is over. Now we need to go back to basics. We need to identify sectors that are materially benefiting. The fact that the overall market is a buy on dips still remains the thesis as we speak. The fact that the overall market still affords opportunities is true. But I think we need to be far more nimble in terms of the sectors we choose. And most importantly, it goes back to basics. So whether it's PSU stocks or non-PSU stocks, I think I don't want to talk stock specific, but sectorally, every sector affords opportunities that people should look at. So as I said, this is something I don't want to talk about, which is stocks. But am I bullish on the markets? Yes. And there are enough sectors and stocks that I kind of look forward to continuing to own over the next several years.
All right. Also have Gautam Trivedi joining us, founder, managing partner, Nepean Capital. Gautam, first off, welcome. It's how do you assess the budget?
Yeah, I actually like the budget, and frankly, the fact that it was not populist, strong emphasis on agricultural, rural, strong emphasis on infrastructure, urban housing, etc. So, frankly, I like the budget.
Okay, and what changes in terms of thesis yesterday versus today and going forward for the next 2 years in your view?
Yeah, so I think the short-term capital gains tax being increased to 20% was indeed a surprise. There was a lot of chatter in the market about long-term capital gains tax being increased from 12 months to 36. That thankfully has not happened. I think a 10 to 12.5% or a 2.5% increase really is not going to move the needle. But the fact that they've kept it at 12 months actually is very good. And as far as short-term capital gains tax is concerned, I'm actually not too disappointed with that either, because that, in a sense, will bring down, hopefully, the speculation. That alone, of course, may not necessarily bring down all of the speculation, but the fact is the SEBI will have to bring in some other curbs and make sure that people don't get hurt, because there are a whole bunch of new investors from tier 3, tier 4 towns who are new to the equity markets, have never seen a correction, and you don't want these people to have a disastrous experience in the equity markets. So, staying course with what the SEBI chief has said over the past few weeks, that the incremental money coming into the equity market should be focused on not speculation, but investment. And I think if the SEBI does a bunch of things to control and curb the speculation, will be actually a big longer-term positive for the equity markets.
Gautam, what else do you make of the budget in this case in terms of impetus as far as consumption is concerned? We've been talking about weakness in rural demand. Do you think anything changes at this point in time?
No, I think the government has stayed focused, and hats off to Prime Minister Modi for this, has stayed on course and focused on basically doing the basic things, which is housing, infrastructure rollout. Obviously, electrification is part of that infrastructure rollout, and job creation. So I think these are things which the government has been talking about and doing for the past 10 years, and they seem to be on that momentum. So I think from that standpoint, the market was not at all surprised that these were the core tenets of the budget. There were tweaks. I think, for example, the lack of indexation going forward on real estate has taken a lot of people by surprise. But my personal view is that is for legacy properties, does not impact future properties. I.e., if you were to buy an apartment today, let's say in Midtown Mumbai, and looking at selling it 5 or 10 years from now, I don't think that's going to be a concern, and that's going to weigh on your mind on buying the property itself today. But if you've inherited a property, or your grandfather bought something for 1 crore of rupees, and the value of that today is 30 crores, as an example, so you have to then pay 12.5% on that 29 crores of capital gains. So those are issues for legacy properties, but not so much going forward.
Right, Gautam, interesting there, because we just did some quick math on that just before we came here. Yeah. And on that, just about 40 lakh rupees, if that was your cost of acquisition in 2002, then as of today, you're at a no profit, no loss in terms of tax. The tax cost is neutral if you sell your property at 3 crore. Of course, if the numbers change, this may also change. But basically, essentially, I think that the intention has been to keep parity in terms of the absolute tax amount that you're bearing, despite the 20% to 12.5% cut and despite indexation going away. And this is, of course, for real estate, gold, as well as non-financial assets. Of course, we'll try and dive deeper into that. But let me come back to Mr. Jayakumar, if I may. Mr. Jayakumar, talk to us about what you believe are the key misses in this budget, because you've spoken about so many positives. What's the possible 1 or 2 things which have been missed?
We do talk about divestments once in a while. We do, maybe greater clarity on that could have come through. Maybe there could have been some more measures on, steps taken for PLI, especially because your manufacturing thrust is so heavy that the PLI could have been looked at as a tool for getting there, because you then facilitate and foster domestic manufacturing. I think, especially in the context of employment creation, etc., this could have been definitely one further step taken. Other than that, my own assessment is there are a lot more things they want to do. They can do it outside the budget. So to expect a lot more than what has already been covered, maybe a little, uncharitable to them. So I'm, as I said, broadly okay. There are not too many misses from my perspective. 1 or 2 which I pointed out.
Gautam, the other big number from the budget is 4.9% fiscal deficit target, and with an aim to reduce this number further. But this comes with costs, right, going down. Your assessment on this as well?
To Jake's point about the one point that I thought also stood out, which was I wouldn't use the word negative, but that we need to actually assess, the government needs to address, is the lack of divestment, privatization / asset monetization. And frankly, if you want to get from 5.1 to 4.9, 4.9 to 4.5, either your tax collections need to significantly go up, or you should be able to achieve a significant amount of divestment of PSUs. And unlike a lot of Western countries who don't have a portfolio of companies to monetize or sell, or land to monetize, we have in our country, the government of India has so many PSUs that they can sell, especially in a market where the valuations of these PSUs have gone up. The stock prices have gone up significantly, and we are in the middle of one of the biggest bull markets in the history of the world. So it's a little odd that the government has desisted from monetizing assets at this point of time. And frankly, if the government were to move in that direction, I'm sure a host of investment bankers, including Jayakumar here, would help them sell these assets at a significant profit, and which could further reduce the fiscal deficit.
We have Gautam with us, but let me also welcome on board K.K. Mistry, chairman, HDFC Life. So, Mr. Mistry, give us your first take with regard to the budget, please.
Well, in my view, the budget is very progressive when you look at it from a long-term point of view. There are many, many positive features of the budget, which I'll highlight. I think the one reason why the market reacted negatively initially was the capital gains tax increase. But I think that is something which the market will pull aside, and I think in the course of time, things will bounce back. Now, what are the positives of the budget? I think at the very beginning, I said that there would be 6 pillars around which the budget would report. The first will be growth, and we have seen enough items or enough indications in the budget that the growth momentum will continue, whether it's in terms of interest spending at 11 lakh odd crores, 3.4% of GDP, and so many other measures which have been announced. Second, I had said in the beginning, was employment generation and skilling. And I think that there has been so much of focus in the budget on employment generation and skilling. And in a country like India, where we have a young population, this is, to my mind, an extremely critical and an extremely important thing that needs to be done. There are many measures announced. There are incentives given to sectors which are job machines, which create jobs like infrastructure, housing. There are so many things which have been announced for the housing sector. You have 3 crore new houses under the PMAY scheme. You have the CLSS scheme, which has been broadly talked about, and I'm sure the details will be in public domain in the not too distant future. And there are many other steps for the housing sector. Encouragement to the states to reduce the stamp duty rate. Then there is enough for consumption, to encourage consumption. There's more money kept in the hands of people. Standard deduction, for example, has been increased, and various other measures have been announced to put money in the hands of people. This will lead to more consumption. Consumption will lead to more demand, and demand will lead to manufacturers and service providers increasing their capacity and therefore being able to provide more, which in turn will create enough jobs on its own. Then there are incentives for the rural economy, agriculture, a number of measures to improve productivity in agriculture. Then there are measures for the manufacturing sector. And last but not the least, I think extremely important is fiscal discipline. And we've seen that there has been a consistent decrease in the fiscal deficit every time we look at the budget. This time the fiscal deficit is kept at 4.9% against the 5.1% which was mentioned in the interim budget, and for next year the target is brought down to 4.5%. So I think these are all extremely positive measures when you look at it from a medium to long-term perspective.
Okay, KK Mistry with us. Sir, stay on with us. I just want to get a quick word from Mr. Anish Shah as well, FICCI president, who now joins us. Mr. Anand Goenka also with us. So we are getting a great panel of corporate voices on right now, even as we speak. Welcome, gentlemen, to NDTV Profit. So good to hear from you on what is a big, big day. Mr. Anish Shah, let me begin with you. A lot of push on employment generation, and some of it now becomes the responsibility of the private sector to take forward as well. I want to get your first take on that. The internship scheme, the incentives for hiring new employees. How do you look at all of that?
These are all steps in the right direction because the budget really focuses on short-term and long-term growth for the economy. The short-term comes in through various measures around consumption. The reduction in taxes at the income tax level is a positive in that aspect. And long-term through skilling, through infrastructure spend, capex spend. And it is right that the private sector has to now step up and partner with the government to drive this growth. This is also on the lines of the Viksit Bharat agenda that the government has laid out. And that is a very positive one because it really talks about Make in India and India being the manufacturing hub for the world. And these are all steps that are headed in that direction. And it is the government and private sector that has to partner, work closely together to make this happen.
I'll take a quick view from Anand Goenka as well. On the budget, what would you say, Mr. Goenka, was one positive surprise and one negative one?
I'd say one positive surprise was certainly the focus on skilling and job creation. That has been the need, and I think the fact that there's been so much of impetus and focus on that, that's extremely positive. I think one area that we hope to hear a little bit more on was on the PLI scheme, but I do also believe that there is a fair amount of the PLI could possibly run on its own, and there could be announcements separately over time. So that would have been nice to hear from the government on.
Okay, so PLI schemes leaves more to be desired. Mr. Anish Shah, just, you know, not just on PLI schemes, not too much there, but the fact that capex didn't really move up post the interim budget, was that something that you were hoping for? Along with that, the 15% corporate tax rate sunset clause not being moved forward, were those a couple of things which I think were on your wish list and didn't come through?
So if I look at it overall, capex is still 3.4% of GDP. And I think the message is that private sector has to step up, which is in many ways a fair message. If I look at aspects overall in the budget, the focus on infrastructure, on roads, and the focus on skilling, I think all of that is positive in terms of an economic growth focused budget. And therefore, on balance, I would look at that as very positive.